Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Very excited about tonight's show. Wonderful to have your company. Following another appalling murder of a defenceless young woman, should we consider bringing back hanging? Anne Widdecombe, former prisons minister and politics legend, will debate that with a man who has been inside. In the news agenda, is 60 too old for dating? And is it wrong for rich people not to hand over their fortune to their children? Is it cruel? We'll discuss inheritance in tonight's show. Also, are there too many drug references in modern pop songs? And best-selling author Tony Parsons is here to tell us about his brand new thriller. It's a cracker. It's called Your Neighbour's Wife. Plus, my big opinion is on its way, and I've got praise for Boris Johnson. Find out why after the headlines. And live in the studio, the Coronation Street star, cancelled for his views on the pandemic. But first up, here's Bethany Elsey.
Thanks, Mark. I am Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has written to the Prime Minister asking him to refer him to the independent advisor on ministers' interests. It's after it emerged Rishi Sunak held a US green card while in office and that his wife holds non-domiciled status. Multi-millionaire Akshata Murthy has now agreed to pay UK tax on her worldwide income, and a Whitehall inquiry has been launched into who leaked her tax status. Mr Sunak has said he's always followed the rules and he hopes such a review will provide further clarity. In other news, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has requested more military aid and financial support as his country braces for a new Russian offensive. The UK Ministry of Defence says Russia is reviewing military personnel discharged from service since 2012 to bolster troop numbers in response to mounting losses. The US National Security Advisor has said the United States is committed to providing Ukraine with the support it needs. And the number of deaths from a missile strike on a train station in eastern Ukraine has risen to 57. That's according to the governor of Donetsk. He said 109 people have been wounded in the attack, which Ukraine has blamed on Russia. Moscow denies responsibility. Meanwhile, Ukraine has agreed on 9 humanitarian corridors to help residents escape heavy fighting in the east. Officials are urging people in Mariupol to leave by any means possible. And some news just in, Emmanuel Macron will face Marine Le Pen in the second round of the French presidential election at the end of the month. Pollsters are predicting a tight runoff between the two, with Macron winning by 51%. In the first round of voting, Macron won around 29% of votes, and far-right candidate Le Pen won around 24%. She's called on all French citizens to join her, saying she would heal divisions in the country. Meanwhile, all major candidates in the election, bar one, have called for a vote against her. The Prime Minister's LGBT advisor has said he's dismayed by the decision to exclude transgender people in a ban on conversion therapy. The government U-turn has sparked fury, with hundreds of protesters gathering outside Downing Street and Belfast today to demand transgender people be included in the ban. Nick Herbert says it reflects more time is needed to help young people with gender dysphoria, adding the cancellation of the Equality Conference is damaging to the UK's global reputation. And Merseyside police have launched an investigation after Manchester United forward Cristiano Ronaldo appeared to knock a mobile phone out of a supporter's hand at Everton. A video appears to show the player smashing a phone out of the rival fan's hand and onto the ground as he limped off the pitch following United's 1-0 defeat at Goodison Park yesterday. Ronaldo has since apologised on social media, and the club confirmed they were aware of the matter. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
It is Sunday, April the 10th, and you are watching and listening to Mark Dolan tonight. We've got the perfect Sunday evening of entertainment for you. Big debate, fascinating stories, and a few laughs along the way. In the big question, should we bring back hanging for the worst offences? An ex-con will be debating that with former prisons minister and politics legend Anne Widdecombe. In the news agenda with my panel, is 60 too old for dating? I don't think so. Is it cruel for rich people not to hand over their fortune to their children? And are there too many drug references in modern pop songs? Debating all of those issues will be my all-star panel, including former model and lifestyle guru Leilani Dowding, best-selling author Tony Parsons, of course, a brilliant columnist in the Sun newspaper as well, and he'll be telling us about his brand new thriller, Your Neighbour's Wife. I'm also delighted to welcome the viral sensation that is political commentator and student Sophie Corcoran. My Mark Meets guest is the Coronation Street actor cancelled for his views on the pandemic. At one point, he was homeless. He tells his incredible story at 10. As always, I want to hear from you throughout the show. So drop me a line between now and 11, mark@gbnews.uk. And of course, today is Selfie Sunday, as it is every Sunday. I want to get to know you better. I want to meet you. So send me pictures of your good selves. Lots of brilliant selfies came in last week. We didn't have time for all of them, so here are a few from last week. Gorgeous Julie, I love your specs and I love your hair. And look at that hairband as well. Excellent work. We've also got Purdy Puss, our feline friend. How about Joanna? Hello, darling. Gosh, I look like Dracula, I'm so pale. And Joanna, you need to switch the central heating on. Probably can't afford it with the cost of living crisis. This is Lucius. Handsome devil, thank you for that lovely picture, Lucius. We'll keep them coming. It is Selfie Sunday, so do get those selfies in. mark@gbnews.uk. We'll try and do 3 out of every break. Now, you know the golden rule about this show. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. I've got a massive 2 hours for you. It is Sunday night, so fire up the kettle and tear open the Viennese swirls. Do you like them? Very creamy, aren't they? And let's get to work. Good news on a Sunday. The world appears to be coming to its senses. This week, British Cycling ruled out biological males who identify as female from participating in cycling races. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to his eternal credit, has found a backbone by saying that human biology trumps everything else. And he said this week that biological men should not be participating in female sport. Well done to Boris for standing up for biological realities. He's shown his balls and is no pussy. The female public will look kindly on Boris Johnson when it comes to the next election, particularly when his counterpart, Sir Keir Starmer, has proved unable to define what a woman is. In the end, the truth that there are just 2 biological sexes will always get through, like water on a leaky roof. I think the participation of Leah Thomas in a US swimming tournament was a turning point. A biological male, still rocking a Speedo full of penis and testicles, thrashing female athlete in the pool, breaking records and towering over his female counterparts on the podium. Take a look at this image. I think it tells its own story. This, I think, is when a lot of people woke up to the madness that's going on. This is the moment, I think, when the issue was no longer abstract and people could see the real-world consequences of yielding to this madness and hoping it will go away. Now, I'm super pro-trans and have many friends who have been on that important and joyous journey. And you should identify as you wish and be respected and loved for that. But you cannot have biological men in rape crisis centres, in female changing rooms, in women's jails, or in women's sports. Going along with the trans ideology, which challenges the idea that there are two biological sexes, has been the moment that humanity jumped the shark. People stating scientific facts, like the world's greatest author, J.K. Rowling, have been criticised for their views. This great writer has regularly been thrown under the bus by an actress that she made a star and millionaire, the Harry Potter actress Emma Watson. Take a look.
What do you say to those people who would have an issue sharing a public bathroom with me?
Oh my goodness. Say, that's another human being.
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. If it wasn't for J.K. Rowling, the only lines that Emma Watson would be delivering are, "Do you want fries with that?" It's not a view or an opinion that there are just two biological sexes. It's not gender critical, it's gender factual. It's an empirical reality confirmed by the most cursory glance at any encyclopedia or indeed GCSE biology textbook. But we have allowed this bonkers fantasy that you can change your biological sex to get out of hand. It has begun to severely impact women's rights, for which they have been fighting hard for centuries. This concerted effort to erase women and female identity is, for me, just another example of men bullying women all over again. It's misogyny in a dress, sexism in a bra, and patriarchy in heels. Tolerance, love and respect for people's sexual orientation and how they identify must be 100%. I am a libertarian. Anything goes for me. I made a Channel 4 documentary about Dennis Avner, a man who believed that he was a cat. Fantastic guy, and I say go for it. Knock yourself out. You're a cat, no problem. Scratch the carpet, purr, cough up balls, each to their own. But pursuing your identity at the expense of others is not an option, particularly when it's half the human race, i.e. women. What's the point in a teenage girl giving up free time in her youth to train hard in any given sport if she ultimately has to face someone with more muscle mass, testosterone, and a masculine physiology? In other words, a man. The world's most famous trans woman, Caitlyn Jenner, a hero of mine, has been on record herself saying that males competing in female sport is deeply unfair. How right she is. Born with a schlong makes this wrong. If you want a real-world example of how bonkers things have got, look no further than the Mail on Sunday newspaper today, who report that females can be strip-searched by trans officers who were born male. Any refusal for this to happen could be recorded as a non-hate crime incident. Welcome to hell. Do you see the problem now? Someone born Barry, Steve or Andy frisking a female suspect. You're going down. My mother doesn't get angry very often. She is a picture of equanimity and calm. But just recently, even she got angry when she heard about women having their basic identity denied. Having resided in her for 9 months myself, in the autumn and winter of '73, coming out in March 1974, I speak from personal experience that there is a difference between men and women, an experience shared by all of us. You can try to make me pregnant, sure, it could be fun, but I wouldn't hold out any hope that we'll be making a baby anytime soon. None of this is opinion, it's science and it's fact. And by subscribing to this fiction, we risk permanently living in a post-truth era. Standing up to trans extremism is a test case for reality and common sense. Trans ideology is creeping into our great institutions, and it's everywhere in the media, and it cannot be allowed to go unchecked. The only thing we can fall back on is the truth. The truth is a light that will penetrate the darkest and longest tunnel. Don't take my word for it. Here is one of the greatest experts on human reproduction in the world, Professor Lord Robert Winston, speaking on the BBC's Question Time.
I'll say this categorically, that you cannot change your sex. Your sex actually is there in every single cell in the body. You have a chromosomal sex, you have genetic sex, you have hormonal sex, you have all sorts of different kinds of psychological, brain sex, they're all different. Well, unfortunately, you can't say this publicly. This is one of the big problems. Even saying this on this programme undoubtedly will result in my getting a huge amount of hate mail. It always does.
Reality, truth, the facts. They have always been threatened and attacked by dogma and religious and political ideology. However, reality, truth and the facts always win, but not without a fight. So to all of the women watching this show tonight, I fight with you, I stand with you, and I've got your back. Reacting to the big stories of the day is former model lifestyle guru Leilani Dowding, a brand new star for tonight's show. Great to have you on the programme, Leilani. We also have columnist and best-selling author Tony Parsons and political commentator and viral sensation Sophie Corcoran. Great to have all three of you with me. Leilani, if I could start with you, do you think that the tide is turning in terms of the protection of female identity?
You know, I'm really glad that Boris did come out and say that females, biological males cannot compete with biological females, because we really do need to be protected. It's completely unfair in sports. And this whole thing that if you don't agree with transgenders in rape centres, in jails and in female sports, then you're some kind of transphobe is just completely ridiculous. And it has to stop. You know, like you, I'm all for people living is how they want to live. But when it comes to, you know, taking our awards, being in competition with us, I'm just, you know, I'm against that. And I just think it's very big that Boris came out and said that.
Yes, I mean, Sophie Corcoran, what's your view? Do you think that actually reality is beginning to dawn, not just on politicians, but the wider public?
Well, yes, and I think people need to understand that this whole trans agenda for so long has been painted as this so-called word progressive. Now, you know, many, many years ago, women were fighting for our rights against men. Now we're fighting for our rights again against men who just happen to call themselves women. There has been no progress. But I think the thing that people have got to really understand here is that if we fight together, it works. Look at what happened with Emily Bridges. They scrapped that whole trans policy. So ultimately, we need to have women, both left and right, both old and young, to join together and fight for our rights, and it will work. Because I'm telling you, I'm not a cervix holder, I'm not a menstruator, I'm not a cis woman, I am a woman, and I will make sure that young people who are younger than me grow up in a world where they can grow up and go to the bathroom without having a man in it, they can go to prisons without having a man in it, and they can play sports without having a man in it. And that is what women in this country have to do now. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on, it doesn't matter how old you are. Ultimately, this is where we're at. And if we don't act now, we're going to fall into a place where our children are going to grow up in a world that is a lot worse than what it should be, especially how many women have fought for their rights in the past. So we have a moral obligation and a moral duty to continue to do that.
Tony Parsons, do you think the Prime Minister Boris Johnson is right to push back on the trans ideology message?
I think he saw a vote winner, Boris. I think he saw that this bandwagon was idling outside number 10, ready for him to jump on. And I'm sure he said only what he believed. But I think it was a real changing moment when Nick Ferrari asked Keir Starmer if a woman could have a penis, and Keir was a bit stumped. You know, that's a tricky one. That's a bit difficult. And he ummed and ahed. And in truth, you know, all of Labour they just can't even side with common sense. And I think Boris has realised that he doesn't have to stay stum about this. I think he realises that he can speak openly. I have to say that I think, you know, I don't think it moves the dial in a general election. I don't think that people, when they're suffering a cost of living crisis, when they're worrying about their heating bills, I don't think they give a monkeys if Keir Starmer thinks a woman can have a penis or not. I think, you know, it's embarrassing that he can't come out and say it, but I don't think in the great wider picture, I don't think it matters at all.
Leilani, do you think that a politician's position on trans rights could have electoral implications?
I'd hope it doesn't. If Boris is going to come out and say a woman's a woman and a biological man is a man, I hope it doesn't negatively affect him, because that's just simply fact. But it's possible, we're living in a very ultra-woke era right now, but I do think people are waking up to it. So it's hard. It depends on which side they're going. I mean, Keir Starmer, it's just embarrassing that he can't define what a woman is. And, we've seen that happen in America as well, not just here. So it is a little bit worrying when you have politicians that just can't say how they feel.
Well, that's right. You've got the bizarre situation, Sophie Corcoran, in which many left-leaning feminists in this country, including lesbian women, are going to be cheering Boris Johnson to the rafters, or even Donald Trump in America, who spoke out about trans ideology in the last couple of days.
Yeah, so we have the legend that is Rosie Duffield. I really love her. She's a left-winger, and this is what I was saying earlier. This isn't a case of right versus left. This is a case of women versus, I wouldn't even say men, because most of the men are on our side as well. Women against the nut jobs, to be quite honest with you. But it's interesting you say, because you would think that this question is just stupid and pathetic, and it is. It's such a ridiculous question. But that's how ridiculous our society is, because this question doesn't just tell us, do you know what a woman is? What it tells us is the politicians that are prepared to say the truth no matter what expense, and those that aren't. It's separating the real politicians between the cowards. And that's why this question is so important of, can a woman have a penis? I mean, we shouldn't be celebrating a politician for saying that they can't, because it's common sense. They can't. But it is a reflection of the time that we're in, that those that do say it are clearly the right ones and who will speak the truth and be honest with the nation, and those that don't, won't, which is why Labour can't lead. If you cannot tell me what a woman is, if you cannot even define me, you're not getting my vote. It's that simple.
Yeah, well, look, of course, it's a debate that's going to run and run. What do you think, Mark, at gbnews.uk? My brilliant panel will be back very shortly to discuss Boris Johnson. Has he already won the next election? Heroic pictures of him in Ukraine with Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky praising Boris Johnson as well to the rafters, as well as lesbian feminists. The world's gone mad. Welcome to 2022. But yeah, is Boris home and hosed? His rival at number 11, dead in the water politically. Has he already won the next election? We'll discuss that with Tony Parsons, Leilani Dowding and Sophie Corcoran at 9:45. After 10, my Mark Meets guest is the Coronation Street star, cancelled for his opinions on the pandemic. Plus, we've got my alternative news headlines and another great British game show. So much to get through. But next, Anne Widdecombe answers a simple question. Should we bring back hanging? See you in 2.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London EC3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Is common sense beginning to land on these shores in relation to pushing back on trans ideology, something that challenges the very idea of biological sex? How about this from Marion? Dear Mark, thank goodness for you, Mark. Your mum must be so proud of you. So on behalf of my daughter and 2 granddaughters, you're our hero, along with Boris Johnson. He's becoming a real hero. He will have my vote. I'm sick of all these woke people. That's Marion in Scotland. How about this from Matthew, who says, good evening. I disagree wholeheartedly with you, Mark. If you're born a man, you are a man and will die a man. You can do whatever you want to yourself and idolise Bruce Jenner. It doesn't change your biology. Same goes for women. These people don't need acceptance. They need psychological help. An email also from Jackie, who says, hi, Mark. I like Sophie. She's your panellist tonight. A woman too. Sorry, I think there's a little typo there. Like Sophie, I'm a woman too, says Jackie. And the first person to call me a cis woman will get a punch in the face. Keep up the fight. I'm glad you've got my back. Well, Jacqueline, thank you so much for that. And indeed, I do have your back and all of the women watching tonight's show. I'll try to look after the boys as well. Hi, Mark, says Gordon. Why not have 4 categories in sport? Men's, women's, trans men and trans women. Job done. Then it's fair and equal. Have a great show. Well, Gordon, what a great idea. Far too much like common sense. It'll never catch on. And Ron says, dear Mark, great panel you got tonight. Will be a smashing show. Take care. Well, Ron, it will only be smashing if you stay with us. Lots of people watching the show tonight. They've been sending in their selfies because it's Selfie Sunday. Every Sunday, I want to get to know you better, and I've asked you to send in pictures of your good selves. This is Karina and her dog, Oliver. Gosh, look at that. What a pooch. And gorgeous Karina, too. How about abs? Listen, I love that picture of you, but I need to see the abs. I bet you've got a 6-pack or even an 8-pack. Thank you for that lovely picture. And by the way, what a lovely smile. And last but not least, at this point in the show, Robert's dog, Moby, with excellent taste in television. Loving Moby. Do keep those selfies coming in, Mark, at gbnews.uk. Don't forget, after 10, my Mark Meets guest is the Coronation Street star, cancelled for his views on the pandemic. But it's time now for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, should we bring back hanging for the worst offences? This week, Koki Selamaj was jailed for life at the Old Bailey with a minimum term of 36 years for the murder of primary school teacher Sabina Nessa. Sentencing Selamaj, Mr. Justice Sweeney said Nessa was the wholly blameless victim of an absolutely appalling murder. Her death added to the sense of insecurity, particularly felt by women walking through the city at night. The defendant robbed her and her family of her life. The judge added that he showed no remorse for what he did to Sabina. So, is this monster a candidate for capital punishment? Should the authorities have this option for the worst crimes? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome broadcaster, best-selling author and former Minister of State for Prisons, Anne Widdecombe, political commentator, Benjamin Loughnane, and the former prisoner and founder of User Voice, Mark Johnson. Now, User Voice is a charity aiming to give a voice to people in the criminal justice system. It was created and is run by people who have been in prison and have gone on probation. Wonderful to have all 3 of you with me. Mark Johnson, should we bring back hanging for the worst offences?
Well, I'm definitely not in favour of that at all. I think the worrying thing is how this issue is completely polarised by the media. I find that very quite worrying. I like the quote from the late Desmond Tutu, said, to take a life when a life has been lost is revenge and not justice. And I like to believe in the fact that we have got justice. I believe in the that it's in society's interest to invest in the successful reintegration of offenders where possible. I believe that prison does protect the public from there, and I think that the death penalty, the history of the death penalty, is really dubious. If we look back at the history of 1950 with Timothy Evans, basically he was hung, and then the murderer basically confessed in 1953. That was wrong. If we look across the water to America, where they have the death penalty, the serious crimes like murder, etc., are higher in the States with the death penalty. There is no empirical evidence that the death penalty deters people from murder. So I don't support it in any way, shape or form.
Benjamin Loughnane, what's your view about the likes of this murderer who's going to spend 36 years in prison, probably at a cost to the taxpayer of between £20,000 and £30,000 a year?
Yeah, no, well, it's not necessarily hanging per se. It's the principle of the death penalty, the idea that the state should have that extreme level in the law for the worst possible cases. We're not talking about sentencing people to death for littering or minor offences here. We're talking about quite serious, awful crimes, people who show no remorse whatsoever, people who even express that they desire to go on and repeat their offences. The option is either they have life imprisonment at extraordinary expense to the taxpayer, or that we have some faculty within the law for those very extreme cases where we might, say, for example, Wayne Couzens is one of those situations where we might say there would be a lot of popular support for the death penalty in that particular circumstance. When you poll people, when you look at attitudes, people are generally against the death penalty as a principle. But when you ask them about a situation like Wayne Couzens, for example, when you say, should Wayne Couzens receive the death penalty, it flips the other side. People are very in favour of it. So the polling can be very fickle. When you present an actual solid circumstance, an actual case where someone has done something abhorrent, people are much more in favour of the death penalty in those circumstances. As a principle, people, I think, are quite abstract about it and say they're against it. But really, in the worst possible cases, it should be there.
Anne Widdecombe, when you were in the Home Office as Prisons Minister, you famously visited every prison in the country. What's your view on this?
I have always believed that there is a case to be made for the courts having available, that doesn't mean used every time, but having available the death penalty. I'm not interested in retribution. If that was the only consideration, I'd be against it. I am interested in deterrence. And you can actually look at the figures in this country very clearly, because in the 5 years after the death penalty was abolished, we continued to collect figures based on the distinction between capital murder, that's murder that would have warranted the death penalty, and other murder, that's murder that wouldn't. And the capital murder rate went up, and this is in Hansard, it was in Parliament, there's no argument about it. It went up in those 5 years 125%. And that, to me, demonstrates quite clearly that the death penalty does act as a deterrent. And I'm only interested in this country. I mean, in the United States, there are all sorts of factors prevailing which don't prevail here. But in this country, the figures are very clear. It is a deterrent. And therefore, I think it's never going to happen, by the way, because there is no majority for it in Parliament. And I've always faced that fact. But I think there is a moral case to be made for having it available. And as I say, that doesn't mean used every time. It means available as a deterrent.
Anne Widdecombe, why are parliamentarians so at odds with the sentiment of the British public when it comes to capital punishment?
Well, it's a very good question, and I'm never entirely certain what the answer is, because every time we've had a debate on the death penalty in Parliament, there has been a decreasing a vote for those in favour, quite a solid one, but nevertheless a decreasing one. You would have to ask those who quite consistently vote against. I think until the advent of DNA, they did have an argument. They were worried about possible injustice. And the wrong person, Timothy Evans, is probably the only example post-war where there really was a case of somebody wholly innocent convicted of something which he hadn't been involved at all. And so I think that, until the advent of DNA, was a consideration. But since the advent of DNA, I do not see that the chances of an injustice are particularly high. So as I say, I'm in favour of it being available.
Do you think Benjamin Locke named that the death penalty might be a deterrent for some?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think it is. At the moment, we have a system in prisons where you've got so much in the sense of, human rights lawyers have made it so that in prisons people don't really get punished as much as they would have done, say, 50 years ago. So prisons now are actually not entirely uncomfortable places. Some people thrive there. They form their networks, their communities. They act as universities for certain people who are career criminals. They form networks there. They learn the tricks of the trade. They exchange tips. It's no hard graft for them to be in prison. But the two arguments I hear against the death penalty tend to be, the first one is that it's not as bad as life in prison. Life imprisonment is much worse, and therefore people should go to prison because it's even worse than just putting them out of their misery. The other argument I hear is about injustices. Well, it's a miscarriage of justice. Why is life imprisonment, if it's worse than the death penalty, any better a miscarriage of judgment than the death penalty? I think we need to eliminate miscarriages of justice within the justice system as a separate thing to the death penalty. If we don't have faith in the justice system at all, then that's a totally different issue. I don't think it comes into it with the death penalty. I think the death penalty should exist, and I do think it works as a deterrent, and I think that the option should be there for judges.
Mark Johnson, an abuser or a murderer might think twice about their crime if they fear they will die.
No, I completely disagree that when we talk about deterrent, when, I've been doing this work for 15 years and read a series of reports like academic literature, etc. And when you talk to people that have committed serious violence, in murder being one of them, and you ask the question, or the question is asked, would the length of sentence that you have now got, knowing that before you committed that crime, would it have deterred you from committing the crime? And it's never a factor, never a factor at all. I'll just go back to Anne's point about so the miscarriage of justice and Parliament, etc. Doing that. We're talking about taking a life from people that have taken a life, but also the state, or whether that's personal or the state, taking somebody's life here. There's lots of evidence of miscarriage of justice. If we look at, I'll give you one very quickly, and that's the Birmingham Six. If you think that these people would have probably been sentenced to, under capital punishment if we had had it at the time. There's other ones, Sally Clark, Angela Cannings. Would these people they would have basically lost their lives, and it would have been later found out that their convictions were overturned.
However, Mark Johnson, do you not accept the argument that the technology around crime detection has improved dramatically, particularly in relation to what Anne mentioned, which is DNA technology and other factors like hair and skin samples and CCTV?
Well, okay, even within that time, since 1973 in America, 184 prisoners sent to death row in the USA was later exonerated or released. There's that margin of error that actually, we're talking about taking people's lives here. I think it's Benjamin was saying about prisons being, because I think you're way out of touch here. We've had the COVID pandemic where 36 prisoners still under stage 3 under lockdown. The prisoners are 23 and 3/4 hours a day, bang up. 70% reporting not even one in-person cell visit over the last 2.5 years. The prisons are absolutely criminal. I'd really like to change this debate to having a functioning justice system. We're talking about tinkering by the political environment as well in the law. We've got now the call for increasing magistrate sentences by people who aren't trained in law. You're looking at sound bites being released by the government. Dominic Raab just recently released one of minimising addiction down to, if you stop taking drugs, we'll let you out to have a game of pool. It's ridiculous. The public really, I believe, it's absolutely crucial that we invest in rehabilitation. I'm not talking about redemption in a spiritual, religious realm. I'm just talking about rehabilitation. Change is possible, and we need to invest in that. And maybe the public would have a bit more confidence in the justice system, and it would change this. It would change this debate coming through.
Anne Widdecombe?
Yeah, I agree with that last point. Rehabilitation in our prisons, and I mean, I've said this so often, and it was the centrepiece of my party conference speech when I was Shadow Home Secretary. Rehabilitation in our prisons has too often been looked on as an optional extra. You know, it's something you do when you've got a bit of spare money, when you've got a bit of spare time, a few spare staff. But in fact, rehabilitation is a crucial tool of public protection. Because if the person who leaves prison is as bad, or sometimes worse, than the person who entered prison, then the taxpayer has to fork out for another trial and another sentence. There will be victims who otherwise wouldn't be victims, and it does the prisoner and his family no good either. So there is a huge case to be made for rehabilitation in prisons. And every Home Secretary pays lip service to it and then does absolutely nothing, dash all about it. So on that score, I agree. But I don't agree with the other points. I think there is a serious statistical deterrent argument to be made for the death penalty, but it ain't coming back. And that's why when I was Shadow Home Secretary, I didn't waste any time on it. I got on with the things I thought I could do, including rehabilitation.
Well, on rehabilitation, Mark Johnson, I think we can all agree that more needs to be done on that, and also the horrors of what prisoners have been through in the course of the pandemic. I couldn't agree with you more. I'd love you to return, if you would, to the show and we can have a longer conversation about the state of Britain's prisons and your amazing charity, User Voice. But let's talk briefly, if we can, Mark, about the victim and the families of the victim of an appalling crime. I can't think that too many of them will object to the death penalty, given what may have happened to their friend or family member.
And that's why we rely on a justice system, because the hideous crimes. And we work in prison, and we work with everybody. And often I don't ask people actually the details of what they've done, because I don't want to know. And that's why we need a justice system which looks at and examines behaviour and makes we have a legal law, the judicial system that looks at all of the facts and makes the appropriate sentences and stuff. As I said, the Desmond Tutu quote was about revenge. That's what you would be looking for if you were a victim of crime.
Is revenge so bad? Mark Johnson, what's wrong with revenge if your loved one has been brutally murdered?
Well, it's a lower form of, we lower ourselves to that as a civil society. As a civil society, an eye for an eye doesn't equal, it doesn't. I've lost what I was saying there, but
yeah, you'd argue it's not aligned with the values of a tolerant and forgiving society, and I guess many would take that view. And you are a practicing Christian. You're a very spiritual person. Do you take that argument that the death penalty is revenge, which is somehow quite un-Christian?
I think there is a distinction between a revenge and retribution. What is un-Christian about trying to save lives? And if the murder rate went up 125% when the death penalty was abolished, then that's an awful lot of lives, to which I, as a Christian, think we have a moral responsibility to save innocent life. So I don't have any conflict there. But there is an enormous difference between revenge and retribution. Retribution is punishment. Punishment has always been part of the justice system. Revenge is something rather different, and it is why, and this is where Mark and I do see eye to eye, it is precisely why we have an impartial justice system in which punishment is not left to the victim, punishment is left to impartial assessment through the justice system. And I think that is right. And I can't believe that, unless we're going to go back a couple of centuries, that anybody would think that wasn't right. But just to add this, it is crucial that the victim and the victim's families do have confidence in the justice system to impose adequate punishment. That is very important and something that we sometimes overlook.
Benjamin Loughnane, do you think that a politician or a political party that stood on a platform of bringing back the death penalty would be a vote winner?
I think it'd be enormously popular, but it would have to be framed in the right way. I think there's less support for it in Parliament than there is in the country. I think that, you know, within Parliament, that's where you've got the difficulty, finding enough members of Parliament to actually vote for it. Within the country, I think it tends to be that people agree with the death penalty in some form with the right safeguards and the right level of requirement for it to be issued. But on the point of justice being, you know, or prison being punitive or rehabilitative, I think it should be both. I think punishment should be done and seen to be done because that prevents people from taking the law into their own hands. When you don't show that someone has been punished for the horrific crimes that they've committed, then the victims are more likely to go and take revenge themselves. And then you get a cycle of revenge and revenge and revenge, and things go into chaos. So you can't just have a rehabilitative system. It doesn't work. Things would descend into chaos if you had that. You need a balance between punishment and rehabilitation. That is the Christian ideal. The idea that you're punished for your sins, but you can be saved.
Benjamin, I hear what you're saying, but is any conviction 100% safe? Just echoing the comments earlier of our guest, Mark Johnson, if just one miscarriage of justice happens, then the argument for the death penalty collapses, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily. You could say the same thing about imprisonment, for example. Should people be imprisoned if there's any doubt whatsoever that they might be guilty? The term we use in law is beyond reasonable doubt. I think as long as something is shown to be beyond reasonable doubt, that is the best you can do. I don't think it has any bearing on whether the death penalty should exist or not. I think that is a completely separate issue. Of course, miscarriages of justice are wrong and should be avoided, but that applies to any punishment. That applies to imprisonment, that applies to fines, that applies to anything at all. No matter how light or how severe any miscarriage of justice is an abomination to justice. And yes, of course, the death penalty is an irreversible form of that, but I think spending years in prison is a pretty irreversible change to your life, and so on and so forth. So I don't think the two are connected. I think as long as you have a high level, a high standard, and you do your very best to show that it is beyond reasonable doubt, that is the best you can do, and I think judges should have the option.
My sincere thanks to political commentator Benjamin Loughnane, former Minister of State for Prisons Anne Widdecombe, and the founder of User Voice, Mark Johnson. User Voice is a charity aiming to give a voice to people in the criminal justice system. Well, the text poll has gone out. We've been asking you whether you think it's time to bring back hanging. Do we bring back the death penalty? That was the question. Well, here's the response. 70.7% of you say yes, while 29.3% say no. Now, we've asked the brilliant Anne Widdecombe to stick around because after this, in our news agenda with Leilani Dowding and the brilliant Sophie Corcoran and Tony Parsons, we're going to look at Boris Johnson. With those heroic scenes in Ukraine with Volodymyr Zelensky, has Boris Johnson already won the next election, particularly with his rival next door in serious trouble? Well, Anne Widdecombe's going to stick around and help us navigate that conversation. Also, we're going to be speaking to the Coronation Street actor Sean Ward, cancelled for his opinions on lockdowns and other COVID measures. He's live in the studio at 10. Plus, alternative news headlines, another game show, and we're going to talk about Tony Parsons' cracking new thriller. Let me tell you, it's called The People Next Door. It's winning rave reviews. Find out why after 10 o'clock. So much to get through, including selfies after this.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
On the death penalty, Daniel says, evening, Mark. Yes, bring the death penalty back. No questions asked. Best regards, Daniel. Well, look, how about this from Andy in Bristol. Mark, public hanging used to be a good day out. Maybe we could set aside one day of the year for a good old knees up. Each to their own. Sue says, dear Mark, terrorists would see the death penalty as making them a martyr, so would not be a deterrent. Well, thank you so much for that. It is Selfie Sunday. Every Sunday I want to get to know you better and see pictures of your gorgeous faces. And I think they're flooding in. Brilliant Tatiana, my producer, has been firing up and lining up pictures of your good selves. So let's start with this one. Oh, look, it's my team behind the glass. We've got Jake, Tatiana and the fabulous Daryl. They are the best in the business, let me tell you. And isn't Jake quite a handsome devil? Have we got any others? Let's have a look. OK, now who is this? Oh, there you go. Now, look, this is a photograph of a nurse from Serbia here. Thank God neither Serbia or the UK are in the EU. It's Slobodan. Slobodan, thank you so much for watching the show. And what a fine figure of a man you are. We've also got Tanya. And there she's gorgeous as well. Hello, Tanya. Thank you for watching the show and being part of the revolution that is GB News. Keep those selfies coming. I love getting them in. Mark at gbnews.uk. Well, let's react to the big stories of the day with our brilliant panel. Still with me, Leilani Dowding, who is, of course, a model and a lifestyle guru, best-selling author and columnist at the Sun newspaper. Tony Parsons, and viral sensation and political commentator Sophie Corcoran. And let's talk about Boris Johnson. Remarkable scenes of him striding through the streets of Ukraine, Kiev, with Volodymyr Zelensky, cutting a truly global figure, a statesman, if you like. Volodymyr Zelensky couldn't speak highly enough of Boris Johnson and Britain's support of the Ukrainian people. And of course, he's neutralised his threat next door at number 11, Rishi Sunak, who has had a week to forget. So the question is, has Boris Johnson already won the next election? Tony Parsons, he's got to be close, hasn't he?
I think it would be a little presumptuous to think he's won the next election. I received a message today from a woman in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, and she was deeply touched by the presence of our Prime Minister in Ukraine, and it clearly meant a lot to her and her family and her country. And I think that when you read a message like that, all cynicism melts away. And I think it was a great thing that he did. It's not without its dangers, not without its risks. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to... He said all the right things. He spoke from his heart. I think he's got a long, long way to go before he wins the next general election. I think it would be incredibly arrogant and hubristic to assume that it was in the bag. It'll never be as easy as it was in 2019. He's never going to be facing Jeremy Corbyn again. He's never going to be facing someone who's absolutely toxic to the British people. He's never going to be facing a friend of Hamas, Hezbollah and the IRA again. for all Keir Starmer's faults, is nothing like Jeremy Corbyn. So I think, you know, that it's possible that there's that people are just going to suffer so much over the next couple of years. They're going to suffer in their struggle to pay the bills. When I think that too many of these out-of-touch Tory toffs really don't get it. They don't get what it's like to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and wonder how you're going to pay your bills. And I honestly don't think that Boris or Rishi or Gove or any of them get it. I don't think they understand it. I don't think they understand, because if they did understand it, they'd be cutting taxes now, not jam tomorrow and checks in the post and all that. So I think it's quite conceivable that there could be a Labour Prime Minister on the steps of 10 Downing Street at the next election. I really don't think he's got it in the bag just yet.
Well, Anne Widdecombe, I hear what Tony Parsons says, and of course he's a seasoned political commentator. But if we've learnt one thing about Boris Johnson over the years, it's that you underestimate him at your peril.
Indeed. Now, I think that if there were to be an election tomorrow morning, there's no doubt at all Boris would win. He's having what is sometimes, I think, rather cynically called a good war, but I think everybody knows what I mean by that. He's doing extremely well. He's extremely popular in the Ukraine, and I think people have a huge amount of respect for the way he's doing it. Now, if there were to be an election tomorrow, and we can all think of the comparison when Mrs. Thatcher had the Falklands War and she had an election the following year, and everything went very, very swimmingly her way. He hasn't got much of an opposition. No, he doesn't have Neil Kinnock, but Keir Starmer isn't at the moment, at any rate, proving very effective. But where I think I might agree with Tony is that's now. But there may not be an election until 2024. There isn't one due until 2024. And a lot can happen in that time, both for good and for ill. So if you're asking me to say that it's a foregone conclusion that whenever the election is, Boris will win, I don't think I can say that. But I can say that I think he has redeemed himself in a big way during this war. And I have a lot of respect for the way he's handled himself.
Leilani Dowding, is Partygate a distant memory?
Well, I think it is because of the war. It kind of happened and made people forget about it. But I think it's a lot bigger than that. I think it, like everyone else said, it's a little premature to assume that he could win it right now. Come the autumn, if the fuel crisis carries on, people are going to have to choose between heating and eating, and I think there's going to be a lot of unrest, probably civil unrest, if it keeps continuing in the way it is, and then gets worse when it gets colder. So I don't think we can say that he's definitely got in, but at the same time, I do think Labour is horrific opposition. All they've done is criticise Boris, said he hasn't done enough, but they've never come up with a plan. They've lost their identity. They're just a bunch of woke people. We need some politicians that are going to be in there for the people, and I don't think either party right now is showing that they're for the people. They're all kind of self-serving, in my opinion.
I can't disagree with you. Briefly, Sophie Corcoran, do you think Boris is back?
Yeah, I think he's got it in the bag. The only reason being is because Labour are utterly shambolic. I mean, they can't even tell me what a woman is. How on earth can they run a country? The thing is, it's not going to be a case of Boris wins it. It's going to be a case of Labour loses it. And it's not going to be a case of that the people want to vote for Boris. It's going to be the case of, again, like we were in Corbyn, of choosing which one of them was worse. And you do talk about Corbyn, which is interesting. The thing about Corbyn is that man stood for something. And what he stood for was complete utter ludicrous. And he was a danger to the country in my eyes. But he stood for something. And he actually radicalised the left to get involved. Keir Starmer has lost both the left and the right because he has no plans.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, look, what do you think, Mark at GBNews.uk? My sincere thanks to Anne Widdecombe. It's brilliant to have you on the show, Anne. We'll catch up with you again soon. And my brilliant panel who return in the next hour, plus Mark Meets. I'll see you very shortly. We're going to catch up with the Coronation Street actor cancelled for his views on the pandemic. See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Dear Mark, says Anne in Norwich. Annie, I should say. Annie, thank you so much for your email. Annie says, I will not vote for a politician who cannot define a woman. Respect my sex if you want my ex is so right. I believe this is a vote changer. How about this? Mark says, Peter, the BBC can't stop themselves. Boris goes to Ukraine's capital during a war, yet the BBC story says Boris Johnson and Zelensky tour Kiev's near empty streets, and the BBC don't understand why they're going to be defended. There you go. Peter says, great show as usual. Thank you so much for that, Pete. We've saved our best till last, a really busy hour of the show. The Coronation Street actor cancelled for his views on the pandemic is live in the studio next. Also, we've got my alternative news headlines, another game show, and more from Tony Parsons and my panel. Tony will be telling us about his brand new book. It is called The People Next Door. It's a thrilling page-turner. And this show is a bit of a page-turner as well. You can't put me down. I'll see you after the headlines with Bethany.
Thanks, Mark. I am Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has written to the Prime Minister asking him to refer him to the independent advisor on ministers' interests. It's after it emerged Rishi Sunak held a US green card while in office and that his wife holds non-domiciled status. Multi-millionaire Akshata Murthy has now agreed to pay UK tax on her worldwide income, and a Whitehall inquiry has been launched into who leaked her tax status. Mr Sunak has said he always followed the rules and hopes such a review will provide further clarity. Washington has pledged to give Ukraine the weapons it needs to defend itself against a new Russian offensive. It's as Ukrainian officials are warning forces are being gathered in the east for a renewed major assault. The UK Ministry of Defence says Russia is reviewing military personnel discharged from service since 2012 to bolster troop numbers in response to mounting losses. The Austrian Chancellor is set to meet with Vladimir Putin in Moscow tomorrow. Meanwhile, the number of deaths from a missile strike on a train station in eastern Ukraine has risen to 57. The governor of Donetsk also said 109 people have been wounded in the attack, which Ukraine has blamed on Russia. Moscow denies responsibility. Elsewhere, Russian forces continued to fire rockets into the eastern region of Luhansk and the city of Dnipro, where the airport there is completely destroyed. In other news, Emmanuel Macron will face Marine Le Pen in the second round of the French presidential election at the end of the month. A number of polls are predicting a tight runoff between the two, with Macron winning between 51 and 54%. Far-right candidate Le Pen has called on French citizens to join her, saying she would heal divisions in the country. Meanwhile, all major candidates in the election, bar one, have called for a vote against her. The Prime Minister's LGBT advisor has said he's dismayed by the decision to exclude transgender people in a ban on conversion therapy. The government U-turn has sparked fury, with hundreds of protesters gathering outside Downing Street and Belfast today to demand transgender people be included in the ban. Nick Herbert says it reflects more time is needed to help young people with gender dysphoria, adding the cancellation of the Equality Conference is damaging to the UK's global reputation. And the Queen has revealed she was left very tired and exhausted during her bout of coronavirus. Her Majesty described her experience during a video call with staff at the Royal London Hospital this week, sympathising with a former COVID patient who lost his brother and his father to the illness. The Queen tested positive in February and, despite suffering what Buckingham Palace called mild-like cold symptoms, was determined to carry out what duties she could. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
What is the best part of my show? It's when you get in touch. First of all, the selfies are coming in thick and fast. In fact, I've been told by producer Tatiana that we are full. We cannot squeeze any more pictures in, so we're going to do 3 after every break, and we'll make sure that we get all of those up. And if you've missed out, we'll catch up on next Sunday's show. So thank you so much for sending them in. There are a couple on their way as we speak. Let me just catch up on emails briefly. This is from Thomas, who says, "Dear Mark, I 100% agree that Boris has got the next election in the bag. The only man that could rival him is GB News' very own Mr. Farage, but he's retired. The rest of the parties are full of morons." Mark says, "Hi Mark, I live next door to Frida Walker, 86, who was murdered on January the 14th this year. Her husband, Ken Walker, 88, was assaulted and left for dead in his own home. She was hit over the head and then suffocated. They should definitely bring back hanging." James says, "Mark, great show. If someone killed a member of my family, I would be very happy for them to face the death penalty. In fact, I would push the button. I also totally agree with you on the trans issue." Look, so many more emails coming in. However, if you think the death penalty is a bad idea, do let me know, Mark at gbnews.uk. And we've got some selfies. It is Selfie Sunday after all. This is Richard in Malta. We've got an international audience. Rich, thank you for watching the show, and I'm loving those bunny ears. How about this from Denise? Let's have a look at Denise. Where are you? Isn't Denise lovely? She's got me and she's got a guitar. That is music to my ears. Denise, thank you for sending that in. You're all gorgeous. Can I just say all of my viewers are babes and hotties. Will I get cancelled for that? I don't think so. Matthew has sent this in. Matthew, thank you for watching the show as well. And Matthew is he's got glasses, a very handsome man, a bit of a beard as well. It's all happening. And Matthew is in Colombia. This show is watched all over the world. Matthew, good evening to you. And last but not least, Yvonne. And there she is, gorgeous Yvonne with fabulous flame red hair. I believe next to a portrait of, who's that famous designer, Tatiana? It's that rather talented lady, Vivienne Westwood. There you go. Well, look, Yvonne, thank you so much for that. We're going to get to more of your selfies. We've got loads of selfies now, so we'll do those throughout the rest of the show. It's time now for my alternative news headlines, and we bring you the news that Simon Cowell admits that he has used too much Botox in the past. He decided to give up the injections, which get rid of lines, after being mocked by his own 8-year-old son, Eric, for his drastically changing appearance. I've got to say, this looks like a good decision. Here's what Simon Cowell looked like before Botox, just his regular handsome face. And here he is after. Beam me up. Congratulations to Brooklyn Beckham, who has tied the knot this weekend with Nicola Peltz. The wedding is reported to have cost $3 million, and security was tight in order to keep crowds away, with armed guards, 3-metre-high fences and loudspeakers blaring out Mum Victoria's solo albums. Spice up your life. Do you want to be my lover? Back to those before and after photos of Simon Cowell. Here's what he looked like before the Botox. Excellent. The guy's got presence, I think you'll agree. And here he is after. Not a good look. Budget airline Flybe is in the news. The low-cost carrier is to return to the skies this summer following bankruptcy. The ultra-cheap airline is expected to make Ryanair look positively luxurious by comparison, with customers being asked to pay for their own meal, to pay for their luggage, and any glamorous passengers will be asked to push the trolley themselves. Doors to manual. One last look at those before and after photos of Simon Cowell. This is what he looked like before Botox. Great guy, famous man, of course, a legend. And here he is after. Positively terrifying. And those are your alternative news headlines. Simon Cowell's monster. Now, let's crack on. It's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sports, showbiz and beyond, as well as those who have a big story to tell. And my guest tonight has both. Sean Ward is the Coronation Street star whose career began as a 12-year-old after he convinced and persuaded his mother to take him to an open audition for a film role. A flurry of parts went his way following his decision to become a full-time actor in 2007. A great career. He appeared in The Bill, The Royal, Accused, Doctors and Casualty, and in 2014, he hit the big time, landing the role of Callum Logan in Coronation Street. Initially signed up for 8 episodes, Sean had his contract extended, and his final contribution to the show was the live episode to celebrate the 60th anniversary of ITV. Fantastic stuff. What a talented guy. Well, earlier this year, Sean revealed he was homeless and living in a friend's flat as work had dried up due to his views on the pandemic. Cancel culture in action, folks. Well, he's not cancelled here, and I'm delighted to say that Sean Ward is in the studio. Hi, Sean. Welcome to GB News.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Great to have you on the show. You have taken a view on the pandemic, which I guess is contrary to the mainstream view. What were your concerns? Let's start with lockdowns. What was your view about lockdowns?
Suicide, straight in, I'm afraid. But there just wasn't any risk assessment for mental health. And, you know, we already do have a nation that are completely anxiety. You know, we love to say, sorry, whoop, whoop. And I just felt that...
We're kind of a mental basket case already.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think they just knew that, you know, that it wasn't really going to... There was no data to prove that it was ever going to work. We've never locked down we've never quarantined the healthy before.
A big experiment.
Massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, the pre-pandemic plan that was in place, I think it's been in place for about 4 decades, was discarded by SAGE. And I believe it was the Swedes who actually stuck with Britain's plan for a pandemic.
Wow.
The one that we ourselves ditched. Huh. I mean, that's got to hurt, hasn't it?
Makes sense. I feel like Darren Brown's part of the nudge team.
Well, I tell you what,
psychologically,
I'm not sure he's as clever as those guys, because it is remarkable, isn't it, the extent to which the public have gone along with the measures. So did you ever, as you began to express your views about the pandemic, did you have a thought about how it might impact your career?
Yes, I was quite worried about speaking out at first, and a few people kind of pushed me and said, you know, there's enough of us that will get behind you. And it was just the initial... You get a lot of hate at first because everyone thinks that you're insulting the NHS.
Yes.
Or you're insulting frontline nurses.
Or you're a granny killer.
Oh, I've been called that a lot. Or that I've got a God complex and I can't save the world and all that. But for me, the hill I'll die on is children. I don't ever think that children needed the vaccine. I always knew that they were going to keep dropping the ages. It was never about the vulnerable. I knew it straight away. They were going to come for the 5-year-olds because Big Pharma's not just going to turn around and say, all right, we'll stop now. So it's up to us to kind of say stop.
It's interesting. I mean, you know, people might label you and have labelled you an anti-vaxxer, but the bottom line is that the JCVI initially ruled against vaccinating 12 to 16-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
Or 11 to 16-year-olds. And yet Sage said, oh, we'll do it anyway, in order to keep schools open, which didn't make a huge amount of sense to me.
No, it's rubbish. And in comparison to the rest of like age groups, 5 to 11-year-olds, you know, they're not at risk to hospitalisation, they're not at risk to death, they're not at risk to COVID-19. There's enough prior infection to say that most of that age group's got natural infection. Natural immunity is better than vaccine-induced immunity. Like, where's all the studies on natural infection? I've had COVID, but I'm still forced to take 3 jabs to go to work. Why? I've got natural immunity. I'm better than most people over there. So, for me,
isn't the answer with the vaccine, as with all other vaccines, which is for the state to say, look, here's the illness, and the vaccine is available to anyone that wants it. I think we've done more to create vaccine hesitancy with the mandates than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, I wouldn't even call it a vaccine. I think that's why they use the word jab and shot. It's a brand new technology that we've never used before. mRNA. They've managed to somehow cut out the lab. So say if you were to make millions of vaccines for the world, you'd have to create a synthetic version in a lab. They're now giving the coding to human beings so that they can be the walk-in lab themselves. It's all just money.
Well, of course, you know, the vaccine is in trials, and a number of those pharmaceutical companies, not AstraZeneca, but the others will be making a profit. So nothing that you've said is contestable. However, you know, it's very clear, and I should stress that the government are 100% satisfied through the relevant authorities that the vaccine is safe to all groups to whom it's been made available. And it's very important to stress that point. But what I don't understand is the coercion. Because if it was simply available, then I think take-up would be massive anyway.
I agree. I think the coercion comes down to the fact that there is other therapeutics available. So the vaccine's available under authorisation.
Emergency authorisation, yeah.
If there was other therapeutics available, then that would be null and void. So that's why other things like, you know, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, all these other things have been...
All these words that will get you cancelled.
Get you fully cancelled.
He said ivermectin.
I did.
Horse dewormer.
And I'm not a horse. They're not for horses.
It's not, is it? This is a...
It's not.
What is it? It's a
parasite.
Anti-inflammatory?
Yeah, an anti-parasite drug as well. But the thing is, they're saying we can't use ivermectin.
Used by what? Millions of humans around the world.
Yeah. But they say we can't use ivermectin because there's no data on it, but we're using the vaccines to get data. There's no data on the vaccines. So the argument for not using ivermectin is the same reason as the why they're using the vaccine. So they're like, oh, we can't give ivermectin to kids because there's no data.
Well, you think they'd hurry up and check whether these other medications might help, wouldn't you? You would think that.
Well, that would then make the authorisation null and void. If there's other therapeutics, no one needs the vaccine.
Yeah, and that's your contention. And it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you could even talk about vitamin D.
Yes.
And this is something that there is a suggestion, a possibility that low level, well, the sunshine might be quite good for you, that low levels of vitamin D further expose you to the worst of COVID. And lots of scientists have said that. And also the Conservative MP, David Davis, who almost became the leader of the Conservative Party a few years ago, former Brexit minister, and I interviewed him on the radio, and he was saying, why are we not giving vitamin D a go?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and I don't think David Davis, Conservative MP, an ex-Brexit secretary, is some crackpot teenager in his mum's bedroom.
No, and I understand. I think with the ivermectin, you do need the vitamin D and the zinc as well to help. So obviously, it's a different type of protocol. So there is there's a process to get that to work, which I understand, but I don't know. It just seems like the world's biggest money grab, and we're all over here arguing about masks, and everything's just getting swiped.
What do you think about the masks then? Are you have you got your mask with you?
Started. I have not got my mask with me.
Do you do selfies of wearing a mask on the train to show what a nice person you are?
The only time I've ever worn one was to see my granddad. My granddad's 89. He's triple jabbed.
Yeah.
The government have scared him throughout this whole pandemic, and I'm heartbroken when I go see my granddad and he goes, stay there 2 meters, and I walk 2 meters, 2 meters, and I've not hugged my granddad in 2 years, but he's triple jabbed. And
also a life in which you can't hug your grandson is probably not a life worth living, is it?
Exactly, but
we get to the point where we're existing rather than living, or we certainly were during lockdown, weren't we?
Yeah, which is why none of the mental health side of it was ever looked at. And I think every route they've taken has been worse than the virus.
And of course the economic side too.
That we haven't even got close to yet, I don't think.
Now, I've had pushback because all I've done is ask questions about the COVID policies. And actually I've said, for many months that the bill for these measures hasn't come in yet, which is why compliance is still there. Well, we're seeing the bill now, aren't we? A cost of living crisis, a heavily indebted country, and a broken, angry, divided society, 4 or 5 or 6 million people on an NHS waiting list. Arguably, challenging all of that shouldn't be controversial, but it has been for you in the world of acting. Is showbiz and acting a particularly challenging place for free speech, or not?
I think...
Are the lovies a bit too woke for all of this?
I think there's always been an agenda in, if you watch the Grammys or if you watch the Oscars, it's all political agendas.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of virtue signalers in my world. A lot of, I'll take it, give me the job. Like, I was seeing people posting online, like, tweeting casting directors saying, I'm triple boosted, pick me.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just like, right, OK. But that's where
if I was at a casting for the next big Hollywood movie, I'd look for people with strong natural immunity.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm looking for great acting, great looks, and a good immune system.
Well, yeah, because
let's go old-fashioned.
No one wants to talk about AIDS.
I mean, I do think that anybody that's in a vulnerable group that risks illness, serious illness or hospitalisation, I think they'd be bonkers not to have it. If I was 75, overweight with asthma, I'm all over that like a rash. And also I can stress that I'm triple jabbed myself. But as we discussed earlier, it's my choice. And it shouldn't be that your career or indeed international travel or seeing your dear granddad should be a factor.
Well, yeah, of course. Like, if I was to take it, I would take it for my health.
Yeah.
I will never take it to go on holiday. I'll never take it so that I can work. I will never take it so that I can go to a shop and buy pizza. I will take it for my health purely, and anyone else who is taking it for anything else has no right to tell me that I'm in the wrong for that.
So...
And I'm not anti-vax, I'm just pro-choice.
How has I guess, what's your platform been? Has it been social media where you've expressed your thoughts?
Yeah, Instagram.
All right.
I don't know how it's not been deleted yet. Hopefully it's protected.
Yeah, well, I think that it's important that we've got this free speech, which is why I'm delighted to have you on the show. There'll be lots of people watching who disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think the majority of the British public are still very supportive of what the government have done to save lives, and indeed, I would say the vast majority of my viewers are very, very pro-vaccine, but it is all about choice.
Of course.
You've seen in Austria, they flirted with the idea of actually forcing people to have the vaccine, not even just for a job, just actually you'll be arrested if you don't get the jab. They've got rid of that, thank God. But how has it affected your career? What have you been through professionally since your posts online?
Just work dried up. I was in front of and behind the camera, so I was doing a lot of running in Manchester, all that dried up.
And what that be when you say running, is that working as on the production side of a movie or a TV show?
TV shows, right. Commercials.
So you were cancelled as like an assistant on a production?
Just in general, no production company would hire me anymore because it's all a box. They have to tick a box for insurance. Is Sean going to do a PCR test? They know I won't because of my posts. So to them, they're like, we won't even bother.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but, it's already been proved
it's for you, as you said, this is a hill to die on, and I fully respect that. And so...
More so just for the next generation.
Right.
No one's protecting the children, and it's driving me up the wall. The pandemic for mental health in children, I put a post out yesterday, and I've got about 50 school teachers messaging me saying kids can't share toys, they can't speak, they don't understand, like, social skills for the younger generation. It's heartbreaking.
Did you see that video in America at Disneyland of a little kid that runs towards Mickey Mouse, and then one of the guards pulls the child away and says, you can't hug him, you can't hug him.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the dystopia of 2022. So how bad did it get? Because, I mean, this, I'm shocked because you're a very talented guy, you've got a great career as an actor, fabulous CV, but it's been reported that you were homeless at one point.
Yeah, so they span it that. I think they thought I was in a mortgage, but I was just renting at the time. But I couldn't afford my rent anymore. And the lad I was living with, he'd met someone and I couldn't keep the house on. I tried to get someone else to move in and I just thought, if I stay here, I'm going to put more pressure on myself. So I put all my stuff in storage and my mate was like, bro, I've got a room there if you want to just come and crash on the couch for a bit. I've been there for a year, so thank you, Nikki.
Well, listen, I want you back on the box. I want you in these top dramas. You should go back to Corrie. Is Callum still alive?
No,
Did he get bumped off?
Every character I play, they're all dead. They
Is
all
that
die.
right?
Yeah. Argyll dead, Corrie dead.
Yeah, but it was all a dream, don't forget.
Yeah, he's got an evil twin.
Yeah. What was it like working on the street? You were only down for 8 episodes. You absolutely smashed it. And you stayed for quite a long time, almost a year, I think.
Yeah. They offered me 3 and I decided to do 1. Honestly, it was like drama school for me. I never went to drama school, so it was like, as an actor, you're in work for a week and then you're out for 6, or you're in work for 3 months and then out for the rest of the year. Like, I worked every single day for a full year.
Yeah.
And that just gave me so much, like, confidence as an actor, and everyone there's so nice.
And working with the likes of, I'm just thinking of the guy that plays Ken Barlow.
What a legend.
Roach. Bill Roach.
Bill.
Yeah. The problem is he's Ken Barlow, isn't he?
Yeah.
But working with someone like Bill Roach.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Has he been on the street since, like, one of its first ever episodes?
Yeah.
Very early doors.
I think, like, the first, and he just kind of, like, floats through.
Does he?
Yeah, he's very, like...
Does he ever
he's very calm and, like...
forget his lines?
He's a bit of a... No, but I remember the first time Roy swore.
Yeah?
In the cafe.
In real life?
Yeah, and he forgot his line and he swore, and I was like, oi, Roy Cropper!
That's brilliant. What are your thoughts about getting more acting work? Do you think maybe just this hysteria around the pandemic needs to wash away, and then you'll start getting those gigs again?
Until someone is confident enough to hire unvaccinated people, I don't think I'll get work, because it's literally stipulated that all people now, you even have to put it on your actor CV if you're jabbed or not. So
would you? Are you London-based?
Manchester.
When you're in the smoke, can we offer you a gig as an unvaccinated panellist?
Yes, please.
Right. Well, we'll get that. Tatiana, please get that locked in, because this kind of discrimination is completely unacceptable. It's become the norm now, and it's got to stop.
I appreciate it.
It really has. But I'd really like to see you in a drama again, because I think, it's a great loss. But it's a long career, isn't it? And people have got short memories.
Yes.
So let's hope if you've got an agent.
I haven't at the minute.
So you'll get an agent with balls.
Yes. Balls that do.
Yeah, and who will actually commit to you, and like the agent that helped you get the Corrie gig, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, it's very exciting, because you've been supportive of a band that have been on tour, who actually got together to challenge the COVID measures and defend freedom. They've received the backing of none other than Eric Clapton. They're called Jam for Freedom, and I'm delighted to say they're also with us in the studio. We've got their founder, Campbell McLaughlin, rapper Inspector Beg, and singer-songwriter Tommy Coyle. Great to have all 3 of you here. Thank you so much for coming in. Tommy, why did you form the band?
Well, I didn't actually form the band, it was Campbell. So.
Oh, God, I don't want to do band politics.
It's OK. No,
so why did you join then, Tommy?
Because I was going to the protests and the stand in the parks, which were like weekly sort of meetings of people who were against what's going on. And, Campbell was just going there, basically, to the stand in the parks and the protests. So I sort of met him through going to that, and it was just like the next thing for me to do was just to start doing music about what was going on too. So
I think it's brilliant. Inspector Veg,
why
haven't more musical artists spoken out about these rather impactful measures that we've seen? Let's be polite about it.
I think because the music industry is kind of controlled anyway, and it's the people at the top that are controlling everything. So the music people are kind of protecting what they have, so they don't really want to say anything and go against a certain narrative. So that's probably why the reason. Some of them might not be aware about it, but it's a controlled industry. So
aren't they, Inspector Veg, corporate stooges with no backbone?
They clearly proved that they didn't have a backbone, because a lot of the big music artists, they didn't say nothing during the pandemic. I mean, they scared us into a self-imposed house arrest. They said it was all for our health. Meanwhile, there was still off-licences were open, selling alcohol, which pulls minerals out of the body, selling tobacco. They said it was about the lungs. They were selling tobacco at the same time. They were selling sugar still all the time. Obviously, refined sugars cause hyperactivity and lead to emotional instability, but they were still selling sugar, selling junk food all of the time, making people lose their businesses, and then telling people that they need to go to the government to get injected for health. And most of these people are toxic anyway because they're highly traumatised. So they're all eating crap food, bread, pasta, wheat. And it doesn't make any sense, really. If you look like the lockdowns, you've got to close your business and you can't make money. And as there's Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, McDonald's, Burger King are still open at the same time. that doesn't make any sense. And then I'm supposed to go to the government to inject me for health and be scared.
Yeah, and Campbell McLaughlin, tell me about the tour.
Yo, give me a smile for that, Inspector Veg. It's all about truth, it's all about love, positivity. We're on a live and uncensored tour. It's the first ever tour done in history, I believe, that's solely focused on censored artists. We've got artists like Inspector Veg, Tommy Coyle, Ramis, special guests like My Bad Sister, all coming through. All these artists have been censored off the internet. They've had their tracks removed after getting hundreds of thousands of views. They're not signed, they're totally independent, speaking the truth. You know, you're never going to be able to get away from it. And that's why we're bringing it to the people. 12 dates that we're playing around England and Wales. And we're hitting up Barnsley on Friday and a beach party for free on Sunday in Skegness. So you better come down.
Beach party in Skegness on Sunday. Listen, is there a website? Because I know there will be a lot of people really interested in your band, Jam for Freedom. Where can people go?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. If you go to jamforfreedom.com, you can find jams all across the world. When I set this up in 2020, there was no musical groups doing what we were doing, playing in the streets, playing in the parks, letting people know the truth about what was going on. Since then, we've got 15 international chapters, almost on 200 shows. And if you want to see them all, get in touch, become a member, donate to support what we do, get these guys CDs as well, and help us keep doing what we're doing. jamforfreedom.com.
We've got Ian Brown, we've got Van Morrison, we've got Eric Clapton, and we have got Jam for Freedom. Their website is jamforfreedom.com, jamforfreedom.com. Check them out. And if you're supportive of their cause, then why don't you listen to their tracks or even see if you can go and see one of their gigs or connect with them on social media. My sincere thanks to those very talented musicians, Campbell McLaughlin, rapper Inspector Veg, and singer and songwriter Tommy Coyle. And once again, a brilliant, brilliant interview, I think you'll agree, with Sean there, Sean Ward, actor. He'll be back as a panellist on this show in May. That's when we've got some gaps, and we'll definitely get you in. Look forward to that one. And lots more to come in the final part of the show. Next up, we're going to talk to Tony Parsons, best-selling author and Sun columnist, about his brand new book. It's out now. It is called The People Next Door. It's a chilling page-turner. It's all about the dangers of adultery, and we'll discuss that with my panel. Is adultery a bad thing? That's one of our news agenda topics, plus another great British game show and more besides. See you shortly. Don't go anywhere.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
It brings us back together.
I did wonder if you'd remember. I was like, oh, I must ask.
No, I wouldn't forget that. No, I wouldn't forget that. It was bonkers. It was a Channel 4 thing. I think it was a pilot, wasn't it? There you go. It's live telly. Don't you just love it? You're watching Mark Dolan tonight. You see, we like to prove occasionally that we are actually live. So many emails coming in and also selfies as well. So let's have a look at this. Hi, Mark. I love the show. Even better on reflection. Thank you. This is Brian with a brilliant selfie. Let's take a look. We've got an image of Brian up there. Where are these selfies? Oh, the wheels have fallen off. Isn't it exciting? There you go. Oh, Brian, thank you so much. What a distinguished gentleman Brian is. A very top-class viewer, I think you'll agree. I'm loving the artwork on your walls, Brian. How about this? Hugh in Watford. And there is Hugh with your other half, perhaps. Hugh, thank you so much for that. A very distinguished gentleman as well. Relaxing on the patio by the looks of it. And this is Bert and Ernie, who are watching your show with me Monday morning here in Auckland. I can't believe it. We've got viewers in Australia, Colombia and Malta tonight. Ian, thank you for that. I'm loving your pooches. Thank you so much for those. We've got all the selfies in now, so we'll just try to get through everything that you've sent over. How about this? We've got Ian, and it's Ian and his cat Rolfs. Ian, thank you for that. You are a handsome devil and so is the cat. Loving that pink nose. Thank you, Ian. Thanks for watching the show. I hope I pronounced your name right, by the way. Oh, no, it's Ewan. God, I'll never live that one down. Ewan, thank you. Forgive me. I'm sure you're a fine Scotsman. Well, let's crack on with the news agenda in the company of my brilliant panellists, Leilani Dowding, Tony Parsons, and, of course, Sophie Corcoran. This week saw the launch of a new standalone thriller by our very own panellist tonight, Tony Parsons. It's called The People Next Door. The story is about Tara Carver, a young, successful businesswoman, happily married with a handsome stay-at-home husband and a young son.
No, that's actually the last book, Mark.
This is absolutely brilliant.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that's your autocue from the last time you interviewed me.
Yeah, we've been recycling.
I know we've overtaken ourselves here.
I tell you what an exciting 5 minutes of live telly it's been. We've got The People Next Door.
The People Next Door. Even better than the last one. Even better than Your Neighbour's Wife. This is kind of my attempt. It was really during the pandemic. I was reading a lot of Ira Levin, my great fictional hero, and hero of fiction, and reading Rosemary's Baby and Boys from Brazil and Stepford Wives, and wondered what would Ira Levin make of the pandemic? What would be the novel that Ira would write in these times? So it's about a young couple, which is often the starting point for an Ira Levin book, who moved to a beautiful new home out in the leafy countryside, and they've got secrets. They bring secrets with them, and it's about their secrets and the secrets that their neighbours keep, and how no secret can stay hidden forever.
Does it tap into that sort of British fascination with what's going on next door? You know, the twitching curtains, the fact that we're a bit of a nosy bunch.
It does tap into that, and I think it also tries to tap into the general sense of anxiety there's been in this century, and it's been building, and it's starting 9/11, the great financial crash, the pandemic, Ukraine. There's a feeling, I think, that we understand finally how fragile life is and how fragile our lives are, in a way that for someone like me who was born after the Second World War, grew up in peace and prosperity, really thought that my life would never be tossed and turned, and the lives of the people around me would never be disrupted by great global events that I couldn't control, the way my parents had their lives disrupted, or my grandparents had their lives disrupted. And there was a sense that, that Fukuyama thing, the end of history, there was a sense that we'd reached this place where nothing bad could happen. And now we're no different. Yeah. And now we're no different. And really it's about the secrets that the neighbours keep. It's how they react to that general sense of anxiety. It's how they deal with feeling that it could all fall apart. It could be some guy eats, some bat soup in Wuhan, and then the next minute the greatest health emergency of 100 years is, or there's finally in history, there's for the first time, there's a mad bastard with nuclear weapons for the very, very first time. And so it taps into that. Hopefully it's a a good yarn. It's another good page.
And paranoia being a free theme.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it, and that was a big part with IR11, with Rosemary's Baby, with the Stepford Wives. That feeling. I mean, you know, Stepford Wives is built on paranoia and fear of feminism. Fear of women getting stronger, fear of women becoming the equals of men. It's built on that. Although it's a great story, it's a fantastic story, and they've made a couple of, one great film and one pretty bad film, but it's just an eternal theme. And what IR11 was great at was dramatising that, was turning that sense of paranoia and fear and anxiety, turning it into a great story where you just want to know what happens next. So that's that. But I'm so sorry to interrupt you all.
No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad
I'd heard it before.
You might have heard that spiel. Can you give me a précis of The People Next Door, your brand new book, not last year's bestseller?
Yeah, it's a story of a young couple that leave London, that flee the city. Some terrible trauma happened to them, happened to their marriage, which they don't tell anyone about, can't tell the police about, and they move they move to leafy Oxfordshire, and the people that they're surrounded by seem like dream neighbours. They just seem like these beautiful, well-educated, affluent people, but they're all afraid of something. They're all afraid of something, and they're all reacting to something, and they're all holding a really dreadful secret, which emerges in the so it's ordinary people in an extraordinary situation.
Does it have a flavour of John Grisham's The Firm, where all is not what it seems?
There's I think Grisham wrote that book in the shadow of IR11. I mean, it's a great book and a great story, a great novel. But I think it does have that. Where you feel as though you're buying into this new life, where you've finally made it and you're finally safe.
So the first chapters of this book, it's just like a dream for the characters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people giving them honey and telling them that honey will last for 1,000 years, which it will, and just feeling, wow, my neighbours are bringing me food that's going to last for 1,000 years. The sun is shining. How can anything go wrong?
And our relationship with our neighbours is a complex one, isn't it? Because in a sense, we cohabit with them. They are stakeholders in the area in which we live. And we've got a common goal, a common interest, peace and quiet, safe streets. But they're not really our friends, are they, neighbours?
Well, I think they become your friend. They can become your friend. I don't know about your neck of North London.
I'm friendly with my neighbours.
Yeah. How long have you lived next?
About 10 years.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that's what, in the first page of the book, Lana says, I'm a city girl, so I'm not used to people bringing me honey. I kind of, after 10 years, I just about make eye contact at Christmas. So I think it's that, it's that city paranoia. But I'm friendly with my neighbours, and but that's knocking on for 20 years. So it's, Yeah,
I've not earned my stripes. I'm
shortbread at Christmas now.
Well, no. Look, it's really. Unfortunately, my neighbours might be watching the show, and I'm going to be in big trouble now.
Yeah.
But
they'll be inviting you in every night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly. Lots of honey.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting theme, isn't it? The idea of, as a basis of a book about what's going on next door. Because that's what they say, isn't it, Sophie, that you don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah, I would love to snoop on my neighbours. I live in a lovely place in rusty, dusty Thurrock, and we have some interesting things. And if there's ever like a cop car that pulls out upside, you best believe I'm the first one at the end of my driveway. Or if there's a fire or something, I'm the first one there. I'm so nosy. So nosy. But there was a real neighbourhood competition, especially in lockdown, as we speak about it. That whole clap for the carers rubbish, right? So, everyone would start clapping, and then you'd get old, Brenda across the road, who's little Johnny, can't do no wrong. And all of a sudden, they're on the pots and pans, they're on the car. They just got to one-up everyone, didn't they? So there's a real neighbour competition, I think. We sort of look past and think, have it.
Yeah, there are stories of sort of spooky neighbours, aren't there? Maybe the darkest example would be Joseph Fritzl or something, a secret family living in the basement. But you do wonder whether in this country, our obsession with privacy, Leilani, means that a lot more goes on behind closed doors than we might realise.
Yeah, I can imagine so, definitely. There's I mean, who knows what's going on? But I've tried to get out into the countryside to be even more private and get behind some gates because, you know, during lockdowns, obviously, you had very, very nosy neighbours trying to see if you had people round, if you were out for longer than your hour.
Were you taking your exercise?
I was.
People were snitching on each other, weren't they?
Snitching on each other.
Around us as well.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
And
Luckily, I don't take exercise, so I was fine.
Well, I was out exercising for about 6 or 7 hours.
I bet you were.
But I think that's the thing as well. I think that the lockdowns caused a lot of friction, but I think they also caused friendships because then, you know, I had secret little meetings with friends that came round, or some of my friends who had kids wanted their kids to socialise with other kids. So it's like, come round quickly, let's close the blinds, let's hide, make sure no one can see through the windows.
Could you imagine if your neighbours like mayonnaise on pizza though? Like, that's the sort of thing I need to know, because like, if they do, then they live in a bunch of next psychopaths, innit? Move house.
Well, too right. It's also timely. It feels quite topical given the number of people that escaped big cities during the pandemic. The theme of this book of the idyll, the lure of the country, which for many has turned out to be anything but, Tony.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a huge mistake to give up the sea. I think it's a huge mistake for urbanites to think that out in the, you know, one of the things that the book is about thinking that that trouble stops once you leave the city, and I think that countryside can be a lot more dangerous and a lot more intimidating, and be fraught because I think there in the book, secrets are easier to bury, quite literally. There's a secret buried in under a swimming pool, and there's one of the great debates about Lana's mental health is she imagining it? Is she just a paranoid city girl, or is there really something out there?
It's been a revelation, your publishing career, because not only were you a music journalist and a TV presenter, and of course, you know, you've written semi-autobiographical books which have been turned into films. Then you got into thrillers. This one is The People Next Door. It's a page turner. It's got suspense. That was a big step for you creatively, wasn't it? And even financially, when you started to write crime thrillers.
Well, because my big hit was Man and Boy, which is, you know, a book about fathers and sons and families, and it was quite an emotional, heartwarming, cockle-warming book which people loved, and I just got to a point where I wanted to write thrillers, and my agent Johnny Geller said to me, well, I think it's a really good idea, but you're going to have to start again. You're going to have to go back to the start. You're going to have to prove that you can do it, prove it to yourself, prove it to me, prove it to the industry. So, you know, I mean, I cashed in my life savings, took a couple of years to write The Murder Bag, and did think, as I was coming to the end of it, is this a crazy, rash thing to do? Because I'm not a kid, and I've got a family that rely on me, there are people that rely on me to support them, and I'm rolling the dice on this book. And there's the thing about publishing a book is that you're really buying a lottery ticket, and there's never, and no matter what you did last time, no matter if you sold millions, there's no guarantee of what you're going to do. So it was, you know, it was a gamble to do that, and you
go into crime fiction or thrillers like this. You're playing with the big boys.
Yeah, you're playing
and the big girls.
And there's a lot of
established people that dominate the genre. Right?
You're having a kickabout with Lionel Messi, and you know, and there are a lot of really good people.
Stephen King, Here I Come.
But it, you know, sold in 24 hours. And went to #1, and so, you know, got away with it, but it was still you know, quite a reckless thing to do.
Well, listen, we're very excited about this one. We finally ascertained the title. And
you loved the last one so much that you're still
obsessed with it.
Fixated on that.
The People Next Door, they know your secret. Creepy and shocking. I loved it. Alex Michaelides, also Jane Fallon, who is, of course, a brilliant published author herself, and Ricky Gervais's other half. Dark and unexpected, kept me gripped from start to finish. The People Next Door is by Tony Parsons. It's out now. Brilliant stuff. More to come, another great British game show, and much more. The final big items on our news agenda, and a few more of your selfies. See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Paul has emailed the show. I love the sound of Tony's book. I shall be ordering it on Amazon tonight. Brilliant stuff. Once again, it's called The People Next Door. Let's crack on now with the news agenda. But first, a couple of selfies, actually. Simon in North Lincolnshire. There he is. Simon, thank you for watching the show. I wish I could grow a beard like that. How about Cassandra? There she is, blowing me a raspberry. Thank you so much, Cassandra. And how about Benji? Benji, what a legend. I'm loving the sunglasses indoors. Very rock and roll. Amazing selfies. Each and every one were fantastic tonight. Thank you so much for doing that. We'll do more selfies in a week's time. And if we missed any tonight, we'll try to catch up with them at the start of next week's show. Well, let's react now to the big stories in our news agenda once again with former model and lifestyle guru Leilani Dowding, columnist and author Tony Parsons, and political commentator and viral sensation Sophie Corcoran. Simon Cowell has admitted he cannot see himself dating ever again, adding that he's growing tired of his bachelor life. The 62-year-old music mogul says he proposed to long-term girlfriend Laura Silverman, despite previously insisting that he didn't believe in marriage. The father of one has reassessed his views after falling in love with Lauren. So what do we think? Is Simon Cowell right? Is 60 too old to date, Sophie?
No, I don't think you're ever too old to do anything.
But isn't it a bit embarrassing for all? I mean, I'm in my late 40s. Luckily, I don't have to date because I'm very happy with Mrs. Dolan. But if I was single, I'd be horrified at the idea of going on Tinder. No, where would I start?
Well, no, I don't think so, because don't forget, sometimes people are made widows and for whatever circumstances, those people want to find love again. So I don't think you're ever too old to do anything. I think, unless you're dead, go for it.
Is that right? What do you think, Leilani?
I think playing the field and going dating is two different things. I think you're kind of a little bit old to be playing the field.
I'd say so.
My fiancé is 60, and so I'd say he's far too old to be dating.
Correct. He's not too old to be dating you. He's just, I'd say he's just the appropriate age, yeah.
But I don't want to define it, I get all red and embarrassed, but really going out there and seeping them out, doing all of that at 60 is kind of a bit... Yeah. But, dates, if you're divorced or you're a widow and you want to take someone out, enjoy the company of the other sex, then why not? It's great, it's wonderful. But, yeah, to be kind of Simon Cowell playing around still at 60 is just not...
You, as well, Tony, are happily ensconced, I know, the beautiful woman. But if you were single, would you be on Tinder?
Well, I agree with Sophie. I think, the longing for love is eternal and doesn't fade. I do think it's... if you're as rich as Simon Cowell, you're never too old to be dating. No. I don't think, traditionally. I think I look at friends that are dating in the, or I don't even think dating, but kind of hunting for dates in the modern manner, and to me that's completely alien. I think I would find that difficult. That you know, in my day, you actually, if you liked a woman, you actually had to go and talk to her, and you had to make eye contact with her, and you had to somehow convince her that you were worth spending a few miserable seconds of her life with. And you know, and I do find when I see a friend and they introduce me to a young woman, and I say, "Oh, how did you meet?" And they say, "Oh, you know, I met her 5 minutes ago on Tinder." I find that completely alien and disorientating, and I don't think I could ever fancy that. So it's a changed world out there.
Yeah, it most certainly is. Well, you convinced your missus, and I tried to convince Mrs. Dolan. I'm not sure the message has quite landed. It's time now for this. Yes, indeed. Just a couple of minutes to play a Great British Game Show. And big news, criticism has emerged around popular music, given the fact that 60% of songs contain references to drugs, including from artists like Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift. So we got to thinking whether you at home and our panel could recognise these songs from their famous lyrics. So let's start with track number one. Here's the lyric. Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. Name that tune. Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. Do we know that band?
I know the song.
I got the song in my head. I don't know that.
If you like God, what happens when you like God? Do you believe in God?
No.
Don't Stop Believing.
Oh.
By The Journey. An absolute classic. What a tune. Don't stop believing. I better stop singing. OK, how about this, number two? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
Queen.
And what's the tune?
Oh,
Bohemian Rhapsody.
You see, I think Tony's just being polite. He knows all of these because he's a rock
Bohemian Rhapsody.
It is Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, which was unique because it was so long. I think it was 7.5 minutes long. Yeah. Unprecedented for a chart hit. How about this? She's in the Class A team, stuck in her daydream.
That's Ed Sheeran.
It is. And the song?
I can't
The
tell
A
you.
Team. The A Team by Ed Sheeran. My Heart Will Go On.
Whitney Houston.
Celine Dion.
Celine Dion is the right answer. That was an easy one. How about this, number five? Annie, Are You OK?
Michael Jackson, Annie, Are You OK?
And what's the tune?
Annie, Are You OK?
No, that's
Jean?
No, what's the actual song called? Annie, Are You OK? Will you tell us?
Smooth Criminal.
OK, Annie, Smooth Criminal.
Yeah.
Well done.
I don't think it was
How about this? Just Call My Name. I Will Be There in a Hurry. You Don't Have to Worry.
No idea.
By legendary soul singer. What's going on with this song? What's going on?
Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah,
Ain't No Mountain High Enough. You put the boom boom into my heart. You send my soul.
That's George.
There you go. It is George Michael and Wham. Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. So Sally Can Wait. She knows it's too late.
That's Oasis.
Oasis. And do you know the track? As we're walking on by, her soul slides away.
Slide away.
Sally Can Wait.
Slide away?
Don't go back in anger.
Don't look back in anger, okay.
What's it like in New York City? I'm 1,000 miles away, but girl, tonight you look so pretty. That's to all of my female viewers. And it was Hey There, Delilah by Plain White Tees.
I love that song.
Thanks to my amazing panel. This is the book you should buy. Stick around, Headliners is next.
Every night at 11 on GBNews, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many in the morning with some brightness in the south. Let's take a look at the details. There will be some sunny spells in the southwest on Monday morning. However, a band of showers will move into the west with some heavy bursts at times. It will be a dry start in the southeast with some sunny spells. The wind will be brisk, which will keep frost at bay. Wales will wake up to a mixture of cloudy skies and some sunny spells. A band of showers will edge closer to the south coast during the morning. skies will be cloudier in the northwest of England, but it will be a dry start. It'll turn windier throughout the morning too. Cloud will also extend across to the northeast of England. It'll be a mild start for many, but the brisk wind from the sea will make it feel cold along the coast.